Joining me today on Experts React is Lilith van Biesen. She's a CTA, an MVP, and Salesforce Principal Architect at Capgemini. Lilith, fantastic. Thank you for joining me on Experts React. I know a number of people in the ecosystem will look at you and go, well, you're a CTA, you're a Principal Architect in a consulting firm. So how long ago did you decide to be a CTA?
Well, I first learned about the CTA in 2018. And at first for me, it was really something to, well, first of all, learning about being an architect was already very interesting, for sure. It's not something that you kind of study to be, it's something that you have to grow into. And then when I learned about the CTA, I saw this as an opportunity for myself to gain more credibility, which is not always easy, especially when you're newer in the ecosystem. Still, to some extent as well, if you're a woman, if maybe your background is not always as technical. So to kind of circumvent all those possible obstacles, I figured going for CTA would definitely help me gaining that credibility, creating more opportunities for myself to take on more of an architect role as well. And then as I learned more, I learned that there also was not already a female CTA within the Benelux, so that's Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg at that point. So I figured, okay, then, well, there has to be a first for everything, so let's go for that. So that was very much a driving factor, especially because I know the impact that my CTA role models had on me, like Doina, like Charisma, like Emily. And yeah, it's definitely something that you want to carry on and, take over the torch, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the whole CTA is the pinnacle of the certification levels. I know we're not here to collect certifications, but I think it shows that a level of expertise, particularly around architecture, which is even more important now that Salesforce is getting more and more complex. So I think for someone who's sitting here now going, I'd love to be like Liv, talk to me about what your journey was like to get to CTA. I mean, 2018 is a long time ago, so there's clearly it's a multi-year endeavor.
Yeah, definitely. And I think by all accounts, I did it quite quickly. It's definitely something, everyone has their own pace, and it's not a competition. It's not also a comparison in that regard. So I did it quite fast because I was helped by COVID, which means every other activity stopped anyway. So I did have a lot of time to focus on my study. But as I mentioned, I learned about the CTA in 2018. I was fortunate enough to meet the Ladies Be Architect founders at Trailblazer DX. It was called Trailhead DX at that time in 2019. And that was definitely a big boost, something that made me feel more part of a community, part of a group of people all trying to go for something so truly awesome in the very, very literal sense of the word. And then, I got my prerequisites in 2020. I went for the board in 2021. And then after one section retake, I got it in 2021 as well. So that is roughly my journey.
So you only had one retake?
Yes, indeed.
Well, that's quite fast as well, because I hear people have multiple goes at it. Failing the first time isn't necessarily a failing of your ability to absorb the knowledge, but sometimes it's applying the knowledge, and actually doing more projects and more involvement actually helps you get through. So just for those who've never been through the CTA, talk to me a little bit about it's not just an exam. There's a whole it's almost more involved than that, because you actually have to take on particular there'll be a subject that'll be raised, and then you have to try and apply your architect skills. So just talk me through how that bit of the process works.
Yeah, and that's the tricky part indeed. So anyone who sees my Trailblazer profile knows that I love to learn. I love doing those badges on Trailhead. I love doing the certifications. for me, they were always kind of like a test to see, okay, do I really understand this part of the system, this part of the product, this part of the role, perhaps? So it's definitely something that I feel very comfortable with overall studying. However, that's not only the thing, as you already pointed out, that you need to really develop and be strong at when you want to go for the CTA. It's one thing to have the knowledge, to have the technical skills, but there's so much more to it. You really need that community around you because, as you mentioned, you have to present a certain business case that you have solved in front of a board of people. And if you haven't tried that a few times, if you haven't practiced that a few times, then you won't know what are your weaknesses there, maybe some elements that you consistently overlook, maybe some things that in your communication are not always very clear. I'm also a non-native speaker, so you have to really train yourself to become a bit more fluent, learn certain jargon so that not every word starts with I do, those typical crutch words that our non-native speakers are very comfortable or very used to using. So I think that's the biggest thing that I had to learn is, technical skills will only get you so far, but if you cannot communicate your solution, it really does not matter how good it is, because, you won't be able to convey the value anyway. And I think that's something that definitely was the biggest learning for me, and something still that I see as a big differentiator and a big, perhaps, predictor in the success of candidates is how willing are they to accept the feedback, to work on the feedback, and to do it together as a team and a community, because that will define your success, I think.
I think there's some really important points you brought out there. One is the soft skills, the communication skills, which I think can easily be overlooked. If you're sitting studying, you're absorbing knowledge, but that's not the same as actually being able to apply it or actually explain it to somebody else. The other one is community. So are you the only female CTA in Europe still?
No, definitely not. I was also definitely not the first female CTA in Europe, but I was in Belgium. I was at some point in the Benelux, so Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, but luckily in Netherlands I have some colleagues, well, one now there. So we're growing, perhaps not always as quickly and as big in numbers as our male counterparts, but we're there and we're very, very vocal, so that's good.
But also, I think I said at the beginning, now Salesforce is a complex strategic application. Okay, when I first joined Salesforce 20 odd years ago, it was 5 objects, and fine, you could build things, but it was not nearly as complicated as involved now as it is now. So the role of an architect is becoming increasingly important, and then we add into that, data cloud and agent force. Suddenly, the role of an architect is critically important, because we're now building big systems which are, the implications of in terms of either performance or tech debt or scalability all come back into the architect's role. So how on earth do you stay current with all these new technologies?
Yeah, and I think it's a big and a very important point, especially when it comes to being an architect, because the expectations are quite high, of course. I mean, an architect on its own, a CTA, definitely, perhaps even more. People expect you to be kind of like the encyclopedia of Salesforce, which we are definitely not. And for me, I feel there's a kind of compromise that you need to strike. There are certain elements where you have to really just learn to understand the high-level concepts, the things that are, the foundation building blocks or stones, components, let's say, of a particular solution, and that it will be enough for you to actually understand what is going on, which things will have an impact on performance because you understand what it's built upon, without being able or without knowing all the nitty-gritty of it. And there are some others where you will choose to go a bit more deep. So I feel like that's a compromise and a balance that you need to strike, because you can't be an expert in everything. That's just not possible.
So if I think back to when you started, 2018, 2019, architect.salesforce.com didn't exist, or it must have been really at its early stages.
No, it didn't exist. And I know Well, it's one of my favorite resources now. I'm a well-architected ambassador, so definitely I highly advocate anyone to go and check it out because I feel like it's one of the best resources that is out there, for sure. But it didn't exist yet, and I was fortunate in the sense that at least Trailhead existed because a lot of CTAs before me didn't even have Trailhead as well. So there definitely are some steps that have made it easier over time, although you still have to, acquire the knowledge, of course.
So let's just think about the career path. So what level were you when you started your CTA journey?
So I started when I was still a consultant, so admin/developer, depending on the mission, of course. That was my first, when I first started to reflect on the architect responsibilities, not really knowing fully what it was.
So anyone who's an aspiring architect could be a developer, they could be an admin, they probably could come from the business analysis area. So the starting point is at any point in the Salesforce ecosystem. You don't have to start as an architect to then become a CTA.
No, indeed. And I feel like a lot of people had the same experience that I had, where they were not an architect when they started their CTA journey, but through doing the preparation of this, through going through the journey, they acquired those skills along the way, and that paid off in their professional trajectory as well. Doing those things, learning those things, focusing on those particular domains within the ecosystem, for me, definitely spearheaded my career into more of an architect role, and really helped position and profile myself as such.
So if you reflect back, how do you think that CTA has improved your career? Is it different projects, better projects, more fun projects, more technical? What do you think has been the biggest benefit in this?
Well, to be honest, I think it has provided me with a lot of freedom to be able to really choose the path that I want to go into. There's, so many options that you have once you become a CTA, going to work for a customer, a partner, going to the mothership, or even going through a completely different technology, which I've seen some of my peers do as well. And even within all of those, there's, again, so many different options. So I think actually the most difficult part for me was in that candy shop, kind of deciding which direction I wanted to go into. I can say that for me it has definitely been the right decision, the right investment that I have made, both in time and monetary, of course, because it allowed me to really find my niche and find what I love to do and what I also am fortunately good at doing. So that's been my trajectory there.
So you said in the candy shop there are lots of different ways that you could go. Did you work with other people to help you chart that course, or was it you sitting down on your own? Talk me through the thought process of how you decided where you wanted to take your career direction.
Yeah, I've had a lot of luck, let's say, or just a good network. I don't know which one it is, perhaps a bit of both, where I've been able to really discuss a lot of these things with some more senior people around me, people who have been in those shoes, and also people who I was perhaps studying with at the time. And they have allowed me to really reflect on the things, what are the possibilities, because again, it's a very fortunate position to be in, to really have such freedom. But also it comes with certain expectation, in the sense that people ask you, what do you want to do? Which I hadn't been asked before. So I think one of the things that resonated with me the most is talking indeed to more senior architects, whether they are CTA or not, a lot of CTOs as well. And then from that, kind of helping with their help, seeing where do I thrive? What gives me energy? What do I feel at the end of the day I have some sense of gratification, that I've done something worthwhile, that I've done something that I feel added value. And for me, that is really growing a team, being that bridge between business and IT. And again, going back to the soft skills, really leveraging that communication together with some very solid technical foundations.
And there are so many important points you made there, which is, I mean, it's a community again.
Yes.
I think the most important thing that came out to me was finding the things that you want to do that gives you energy, that you said you're lucky, but I think if you chart the right course, you end up working your way towards doing stuff that you like doing, and therefore you're good at it, therefore you spend more time doing it, therefore you lean in, therefore you get better at it. It's this virtuous circle, and
Yes,
finding that direction I think is really important. So all of the training that you can get is mostly on the technical skills. So where you've talked a lot about the importance of soft skills. So where did you go to get those skills, or did you just bump into them?
No, I mean, definitely some people have more opportunities during their professional trajectory, let's say, to work on those soft skills, to really talk to different stakeholders, different audiences, and go from that angle. In fact, when I look at some of the people that I coach or mentor, the ones that are coming from a not so technical background, that are maybe business analysts or very typical consultants, or somewhere at least in a position to speak a lot, to be in those discussions, be involved in that, they have a leg up, I feel, because the technical elements, the technical foundations and skills, you can learn more easily to some extent on your own, while the others are really something that you have to build and practice with a group of people. So what I always, again, advise people to do, and we've talked about it a few times already, it's that community, right? It's really finding those opportunities, finding that group of people where you can practice. Again, luckily there's a ton of different groups which do exactly this, a ton of different communities which really get together and practice these kind of skills. And I think that's exactly what people who want to become a CTA and also just want to become architects in general, I think, need to do, is to find those groups and find the ecosystem and the communities where they can really practice these things.
So speaking at user groups, I mean, then speaking maybe at Trailblazer DX or speaking at Dreamforce or World Tours, obviously is presenting is one set of skills, writing is another set of skills. But there's also architect dreaming. So there was architect dreaming in Europe. There's going to be an architect dreaming in the US in January, tied to Cactus Force. So there's it's interesting that we're now getting dreaming events that are specific to a particular role type. So if you have an interest in being an architect, we know where they're all going to be. They're going to be at architect dreaming, either presenting or in the audience. So that I think there are more opportunities than maybe when you started, where you really were a trailblazer in the true sense of the word, where there was no architect.salesforce.com, there was no architect dreaming, so you were having to make a lot of that up. So let's think about, if you were starting now, what would you tell yourself? Think about where you were when you first started. What advice would you give yourself now?
Well, looking back, I think one of the things that I definitely would work on, or would tell myself to work on the most, is, take it a bit easier, to be honest, because I feel I put a lot of pressure on myself, and it paid off. But I think one of the things that I've learned, and maybe this is just a smaller side note, but I experienced burnout this year. So this is coming from a very new insight, let's say, where I think it's definitely good to have high goals and ambitions, but it's also really good to find a sustainable way to get there. And I think while I'm definitely happy with all the experiences that I've had, because they made me who I am today, which, I'm quite happy with, it's still something that I feel like we can't stress enough, to make sure that we do take some time for ourselves, make sure that we do disconnect from time to time. And I think overall, in the way that we want to grow, whether it's an architect or basically in any different direction we want to go, making sure that we have those disconnected spaces where our brain can truly wander off and do its thing. It will help us get back in a more creative way. And a lot of the value that I think we as humans, especially with an emerging AI, can bring is that out of the box creative thinking that you can only get an AI to do if you prompt it in the right way. Again, being creative as a human. So maybe it's a bit of a broad answer, but that's what I would say is just let your mind wander.
But you also said at the beginning it's not a competition. So
Yes.
you're not being measured on how quickly you do it. And it may be, you have other priorities, it's your learning style, the speed you learn. But also, I think you said it throughout this, a lot of it is applied knowledge. So if you haven't had those project experiences, it's quite difficult to apply the knowledge and therefore be able to pass the board when it comes through. So it's a combination of making sure you're staffed on the projects that actually will give you the supporting experience that you can apply what you've learnt to. So again, some of those things are outside your control. But at least if you've set a direction, you can start to make decisions about, this project is a better project for me than that one because it's taking me in a direction. So I think that the biggest decision you made was probably in 2018 going, I want to be one of those, because then lots of other decisions along the way start being made for you, which is Project X versus Project Y, which trailhead course, what user groups to attend. So I think setting that first decision is important, but I think, as you said, it's a relatively long journey, and you did it fairly quickly, but even so, it's a long journey. It's quite a commitment. But again, it sounds like the benefits of getting that CTA is definitely worth it for the right person.
Yeah, indeed, and I think that's definitely something that I feel very, very strongly about is keep that why in mind. I mean, I've seen people throughout who have gone for the CTA, who have not gotten it, and who actually, well, they don't need it for the goal that they have, for the direction that they want to go into. I want to maybe do a quick, shout out to one of the people that I think is such an embodiment of success. Gemma Blizzard, she did not become a CTA, but she started the Architect Club. I mean, how amazing is that? And she has such a legacy to her without, being a CTA. So again, it's all about, does it fit the direction you want to go? For me, getting the CTA was huge. It made a lot of changes. It opened a lot of doors, but it's not necessarily the end goal, or it's not necessarily, like the label of CTA that gets you there. It's about you and the journey that you've taken to get there, that made you a better architect, that got you that network, and that made you really understand the value of how to go about certain things in a certain way and have those conversations.
So CTA is sort of the pinnacle, the top of certifications. So now you've reached the top. Now what?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, I think now what? One of the things that I want to keep doing is to keep exploring. So I always said I wanted to go a bit broader, right? I know Salesforce a lot. I want to explore other technologies out there, not leaving Salesforce behind, but taking Salesforce with me on that journey and seeing where maybe some synergies can be. So that's definitely a very exciting journey that I've taken. And also within Capgemini, I've been very fortunate to go into their internal certification process, which is really very diverse because it exists not only of, your typical IT consultant architects, but also of very engineer architects, business architects. And it's, again, a whole new world that opens up for me. So I'm a sponge. I love to learn. I will keep learning about Salesforce, but I will also keep learning about other things that are out there, like, architecture, different technologies, and again, how to bridge all of those together, because that's where I like to be. I like to be the bridge or the glue or whatever you call the thing that's in between.
That's so important. I think also, if you think about where Salesforce is going in terms of of data cloud in terms of connecting to other systems, to an agent force which is now starting to take all that data, and we need to think about how we architect that. I mean, I'm not sure you could have guessed back in 2018 how pivotal the role you are in now and how important that's going to be to Salesforce. So there is no shortage of new things for you to go and do, clearly, but actually the level of importance is increasing. So if people want to reach out to you, I know there are a lot of people that will have been excited to hear about your journey and maybe want to follow in your footsteps. Was it they've reached out to you on LinkedIn?
Yes, yeah, that's the easiest way. And then I usually reserve a bit of time here and there as kind of office hours, if you want to call it that way. So I'm always happy to schedule a one-on-one with anyone who reaches out.
Oh, that is fantastic. Thank you so much. So thank you for joining us. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you, Lilith.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been quite a blast.